Your Eminences, Most Reverend Fathers, distinguished guests. First of all, a heartfelt thank you to the organizers for their kind invitation and all their efforts to bring us together at this deeply enriching conference. Before we start, just to add to what Father Konstantinos mentioned, ADF International is the international side of Alliance Defending Freedom, which is the US organization with whom some of you in the room may be acquainted. It is a Christian lawyers organization advocating for freedom of religion, freedom of conscience, freedom of speech, and we have 8 offices internationally with a permanent presence and accreditation at the main international organizations such as the United Nations, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, and the Fundamental Rights Agency of the European Union. In what follows, I aim at presenting a snapshot of our cases, arguing that hate speech legislation feeds into a wider cancel culture that limits the legal ability of the Church and its faithful to proclaim moral truth. Let's start with Päivi Räsänen. In Finland, a member of parliament and former Minister of Interior has been facing prosecution for more than 5 years for formulating her beliefs online about marriage, family, and human sexuality. Concretely, Päivi posted a tweet, the one that you can see on the left-hand side of the slide, which is a quote from the Bible, from the Epistle to the Romans, and she demanded a response from her church, the Lutheran Church of Finland, which had expressed support for the Gay Pride of 2019 in Helsinki. This tweet unleashed an entire firestorm in what is arguably the most important current case that we have in Europe regarding freedom of expression and freedom of religion. Let's watch Päivi tell her story.
I believe that God has created all people equal, and that's why the human value is absolute. It is the same in each person. I think that this is a very important starting point in politics. I am married to my husband, who is a pastor of the Finnish Lutheran Church, and he's also a principal of Bible College. And we have 5 children, also 6 lovely grandchildren from the ages of 3 months to 7 years. I'm suspected of 2 crimes just now. And the first one was a Twitter case that was at that time aimed and directed to the leadership of my church. And the other case is a pamphlet that I wrote 16 years ago. It was published year 2004. And it is a booklet about sexual ethics, about marriage between man and woman. And it is also connected with Bible teaching.
This is a case that is about our freedom to express our faith, our convictions, our freedom to voice opinions in the public square without fear of censorship and certainly without fear of police investigation.
This kind of police investigation tends to have a chilling effect in our society, so that some people are afraid to use their freedoms to teach what Bible says or practice their faith. I want to defend also the rights of other people to express their faith and also to use the freedom of speech.
International law, as well as Finland's own constitution, robustly protects freedom of religion and freedom of expression. This case is so important, not just the case itself and for Päivi Räsänen, but for the whole of Finland and in fact the whole of Europe, because everyone's watching on, looking at this case and thinking, if someone can be investigated by the police for tweeting a picture, some Bible verses, and a pamphlet that was written 15 years ago, then really, are any of us safe? Is any of our speech safe? In a truly free society, ideas should be fought with other ideas, not with the threat of criminal sanctions or criminal penalties.
Now, Päivi faces prosecution on 3 counts, not 2. The video is a little bit old. So she has faced prosecution for the tweet she posted, the book on marriage, and a passage taken out of context from an interview she delivered in 2019. Interestingly, also Lutheran Bishop Juhana Pojola is prosecuted for having given the blessing for the booklet on marriage, a booklet which is, I repeat, published 15 years before the general prosecutor brought her legal charges regarding Päivi and the bishop, and also importantly, at a time when same-sex marriage was not even legal in Finland. With our support, Päivi and the bishop unanimously won at the first 2 legal instances in Finland, and they're awaiting now the sentence and the decision of the Supreme Court of Finland. Moving on, in Mexico, former Congressman Rodrigo Iván Cortés and sitting Congressman Gabriel Cuadri have been convicted for gender-based political violence and placed on an offenders register for Twitter posts. The reason? They refer to transgender people through their biological sex and not their preferred pronoun. For expressing their views on biological sex, both have been ordered to publish a court-written apology on X or Twitter every day for 30 days, a couple of times a day, as a form of public humiliation. With our assistance, Cuadri and Cortés have appealed to the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. Next, in France, the renowned foundation Jérôme Lejeune, dedicated to protecting the lives of people with Down syndrome, had one of its flagship videos censored on public television. Concretely, ahead of the World Down Syndrome Day, the foundation produced a Dear Future Mom video featuring European individuals with Down syndrome addressing a hypothetical mother expecting a baby with Down syndrome. Here are their voices.
Cara futura mamá.
Don't be afraid.
Tu niño podrá hacer muchas cosas.
Podrá marcharte.
Podrá correr hacia ti.
Il pourra parler et te dire qu'il t'aime.
Il pourra aller à l'école.
Como todos. Il pourra t'écrire si un jour elle est loin.
Because indeed, he'll be able to travel too.
Il pourra aider son père à réparer son vélo.
Podrá laborar.
Y ganar su dinero.
Avec son salaire, il pourra t'inviter à dîner.
O affittare un appartamento e andare a vivere da solo. A volte sarà difficile.
Jak těžko.
Quasi possible.
Et c'est pas pareil pour toutes les mères.
Dear future mom.
Tuo figlio potrà essere felice. Come lo sono io.
Et tu seras heureuse aussi.
Vera mamma.
It's every time so difficult to follow after this video. A couple of years ago, this video that has brought every one of us into tears, and it happens at each and every conference that I'm showing it, has actually been censored by the public televisions in France. And the reason for that is, I quote, that it may disturb the consciences of women who performed abortions. Unfortunately, Fondation Jérôme Lejeune and the case that we've represented before the European Court of Human Rights lost the case at the European Court 2 years ago because the court said that these children that appeared in the videos do not have a victim status. So, Paivi, Bishop Yuhana, Rodrigo Ivan Cortés, Gabriel Quadri, and Fondation Jérôme Lejeune, national, inter-American, and European levels. How is it possible that these cases involving core beliefs on marriage, biological sex, and the sanctity of life are prosecuted today? The simple answer is hate speech legislation. While most of us are familiar with the term hate speech, this is not found in any international convention. Its legal basis can be tracked down to 2008 with the EU Framework Decision, which instructed EU countries to pass national hate speech legislation. Additionally, there is a plethora of non-binding legal resolutions at the European Union and United Nations, which use vague terms such as combating hateful rhetoric and prejudice, misinformation, combating actions which promote and justify hatred, other forms of hatred and intolerance, hostility, and aggressiveness. As we speak, an island from the Caribbean is discussing now a law by which its citizens can go to jail for 7 years for posts which may cause, I quote, emotional distress or embarrass the readers or the hearers. Clearly, pastoral care or pro-life videos such as Dear Future Mom would fall under such a category. The 2019 UN Strategy and Plan of Action on Hate Speech defines it as, I quote, any kind of communication in speech, writing, or behavior that attacks or uses pejorative or discriminatory language with reference to a person or a group on the basis of who they are, including religion, nationality, gender, or other identity factor. Now, for any legally trained eye, these loose words can be stretched to encompass endless scenarios. Primarily since 2008, the concept of hate speech has started to clash, challenge, and erode well-established international protections of free speech, which are grounded in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the European Convention on Human Rights, and the EU Charter, just to mention a few. But for reasons of time, I will not focus on the provisions regarding freedom of expression, but rather on hate speech laws. As Christians, we should obviously oppose hatred. We should fight hatred with love, striving to put into practice the words of our Lord Jesus Christ, who said, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them that despitefully use and persecute you. Because of this, a vast majority of people, including people in the church, uncritically and unequivocally support hate speech laws, which they see as a secular tool to fight hatred. But this is not so. Hate speech laws are problematic as they have a circular definition. Hate speech is defined as incitement to hatred. Therefore, whoever has the power to define hatred has the power to qualify each and every one of us as either law-abiding or law-breaching citizens. Hate speech laws are by definition vague and subject to the ideological interpretations of those in power. They are inconsistently interpreted and arbitrarily enforced because what hate speech was 5 years ago may be something else today or maybe something else tomorrow. Former UN Special Rapporteur on the promotion and protection of the right to freedom of opinion and expression said, I quote, the vagueness of hate speech and harassment policies has triggered complaints of inconsistent policy enforcement that penalizes minorities while reinforcing the status of dominant or powerful groups. Additionally, hate speech is based more on the hearer's subjective perceptions and feelings than the content itself. Hate speech may end up being speech that is deemed offensive or disturbing by a certain group of people regardless of the objective harm done, for example, gay or transgender activists, or women who had abortions in the mentioned cases. Now, keep in mind these definitional and legal issues and apply them to the digital sphere. The big IT platforms are bound by the same legal standards on freedom of expression and hate speech on the one hand, and internal terms and conditions on the other, which give even broader legal leeway for companies to delete speech. See in the slide the example of someone who posted, I quote, Jesus died so you could live, end of quote. Jesus died so you could live, a statement which was forcefully deleted from social media as it was deemed contrary to the community standards on hate speech. Now, depending on the type and implementation of algorithms, speech based on moral beliefs might be deprioritized, meaning it would appear very seldom or very low in searches, or deleted with no means of recourse. Currently, once speech is illegitimately deleted, an appeal is virtually impossible. There are two pieces of legislation that will shape the dynamics. The Digital Services Act, which has already been adopted at the EU level and aims at moderating content on all platforms, small and big, such as Facebook, X, TikTok, Instagram, and so on. Its implementation has only just started, and we will need to see the practical impact on speech, but its potential for censorship is deep, wide, global, and profound. The second one is being negotiated in the Council of the EU, where it needs unanimous approval. It is a proposal for an EU directive to make hate speech an EU crime at the same level with terrorism, human trafficking, and money laundering. Two aspects in this regard: impact and prosecution of speech online. First, impact. Through artificial intelligence, it will be easier to scout and spot speech, videos, and initiatives such as those of PAIVI, Fondation Jérôme Lejeune, or Gabriel Quadri. Books and talks of a cultural, political, and spiritual level will be assessed by artificial intelligence against the backdrop of hate speech and other buzz terms such as misinformation, disinformation, or abuse of information. On prosecution, if this directive passes, not only will speech be deleted, but criminal prosecution will be open to all countries that can claim jurisdiction over a possible hate speech perpetrator. Concretely, if PAIVI posts something similar again on Twitter, then she can be prosecuted not only in Finland, but in any other EU country, be it Greece, Italy, or Romania, just as a suspect of terrorism, easily identified by artificial intelligence in the online sphere, heavily prosecuted as a terrorist in courts. What should we do about it? Firstly, inform and equip people from the church, politicians, and legal practitioners about the dangers of hate speech legislation and its application to the online sphere. Many of you are affiliated or at least in touch with media platforms, so let's get this issue the attention it deserves. Secondly, inform governmental contacts who negotiate this in the Council, because we need to raise the issues that I have presented today. On both points, we have materials, including a book entitled Censored, so feel free to approach me and I can share more about that. Keeping in mind these are important legal aspects that will shape the legal ability of the Church and its faithful to speak and express moral truth, I would like to conclude with PAIVI's words. I will defend my right to express my religious beliefs so that no one is deprived of their right to free speech and religion. If I lose in court, I think the worst consequence will not be a fine or an imprisonment, but censorship. Thank you.